Hi, here are all the books that I read in May. We're going to start with the books and then end with the comics. Let's go, no time wasted. Now, I just got back from a week-long trip with my partner's family, and it went the way that family trips go. And I took with me 4 books and my laptop. I had to do some work, I had 4 books I wanted to get through, and I also wanted to write a fresh new story of my own. Instead, I read 1 book, and this is that book. The reason I thought I'd get through so many books is because the last time I went on a holiday with my partner's family, I tore through 3 books at least, and this time I could barely get through 1, and this thing is exactly 300 pages long. It's not a long book, and I do think that that length is to the book's credit. It is so perfectly paced and timed and edited. It's great. But what is it? Well, Future's Edge is a science fiction novel by British author Gareth Powell. It's a lovely blend of science fiction and horror, 2 genres that work so well together for so many reasons, and I'm gonna do a whole video exploring the perfect marriage that is science fiction and horror. So look out for that soon. In that video, I'm gonna talk about this book, so I'll keep this brief. Future's Edge is set not too far into the future, maybe 100 years or so. Our protagonist was working as an archaeologist, but now, like the rest of humanity, she is a refugee living on a distant planet. And that's because Earth was quickly invaded and destroyed by a strange race called the Cutters. That's a name that we have given them. We don't know anything about them. They came along and they destroyed Earth. But while she was working as an archaeologist, our protagonist found a strange artifact, left there presumably by an ancient civilization. And the artifact changed her DNA, made her incredibly difficult to harm or kill. And she has no idea why. But her ex-husband has suddenly rocked up and said that she's really important and she might hold the future of humanity in her hands because of this strange artifact that she found. And so we go on a journey with them on his ship, which he then got married to, and it's not as weird as that sounds, to discover who the Cutters are, who this ancient lost civilization were, lots and lots of twists and turns. It's so much fun. I really, really enjoyed this book, and I think more people should be reading Gareth L. Powell. This book is covered in accolades from different sci-fi writers, most of which you will be familiar with, but you might not be familiar with him, and you should be. Next up, we have The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. Now, I did a whole video about this that you can go and watch. In that video, I talked about how I read the novel, I rewatched the film, and I compare the two. But I didn't set out to actually say which one is better. Instead, I just wanted to explore how these two things are different, especially considering they were both written by William Peter Blatty. He was a screenwriter, then he went off and wrote this novel, and then he adapted it into a screenplay for the film that we, well, not all, but a lot of us know and love. The Exorcist is still well regarded as one of the greatest and most frightening horror movies of all time. And I was really curious about how the book and the film are different, and it's really interesting how they are different. I explore all of that in the video. But to summarize it, kind of, the novel spends a lot more time with our characters. It fleshes them out a lot more, and it also adds a lot more nuance. There is mystery. There is deniability to the idea that any of this is even really a possession and an exorcism. There's a lot more subtlety in terms of the mood, in terms of the characters, and in terms of the events of the story. The film is a possession and an exorcism. There is no way around that, but there is a sense of deniability and mystery to the entire novel right from the beginning, and I found that so interesting. The fact that Blatty wrote this thing, then he adapted it into a film, and as he adapted it, he made sure that there was no deniability in the film. It's very clear what's going on, but the book has that subtlety, has that deniability, has that mystery to it that is lacking in the film, but the film does so much that the book doesn't because of its ensemble nature. It is more frightening than the book, in my opinion. And that is so much down to the score, down to the incredible performances and so many of the incredible effects. So often, visual media is more frightening than the stuff that we read. And that's because films can attack your senses in more ways than one, and The Exorcist does such a wonderful job of that. So if you want my full thoughts, go check out that video. One of the absolute best books that I read this month was Vanishing Wild by Sayaka Murata, translated from the Japanese by Ginny Tapley Takimori. If you've spent any time at all on this channel, then you'll know that I am a massive fan of Sayaka Murata. Her book, Convenience Store Woman, is in my top 5 favorite novels, and I have loved everything she's ever written. And in my opinion, as I've sat with this book for a few weeks now, Vanishing Wild is not my favorite of hers, but I do think it might be her smartest and most thought-provoking book. I went into so much detail about this in a pretty lengthy review video, so you can go watch that. But what's so strikingly interesting about Vanishing Wild is the fact that Sayaka Murata doesn't pick a side. She takes a concept, an idea that she came up with based on observations of the world around her, and she just kind of places it in this story and goes, wow, isn't this interesting? What do you think about this? She doesn't really have a bias when it comes to this story, and I think that's absolutely fascinating. The book is clearly inspired by the declining birth rate in Japan, by the lack of intimacy in Japan that exists in romantic and social situations, but also it is a work of science fiction based on ideas of artificial insemination. Vanishing Wild is so interesting. It presents so many captivating ideas, and I had so many thoughts, and I couldn't stop talking. So my video about this is pretty lengthy, pretty detailed, so go watch it. A few weeks ago now, I was sent a book box to open and talk about in a sponsored video. And obviously I didn't know what to expect, but I was so pleasantly surprised by what was inside this box from A Box of Stories. One of those books was Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang, a kind of up-and-coming cult horror story. I feel like this is the kind of thing that so many people are going to be talking about for so many years, but in specific circles. The kinds of circles that include authors like Ottessa Moshfegh and Eliza Clark. This is that kind of a book. If you're a fan of Eliza Clark or Ottessa Moshfegh or Mona Awad, you're going to enjoy this. Natural Beauty is a mystery horror story that will feel kind of familiar if you've watched something like The Substance, for example, in the sense that it's a horror story about the beauty industry. But Natural Beauty is very much a feminist story, but it's also a story about immigration and race. It's a novel with a lot of twists and turns and an ending that you definitely won't see coming. This book kind of builds itself on mysteries and strangeness and weird twists all the way through it, which makes it kind of difficult to talk about. But I did put together a video just the other day on, I think I called it The Wild and Wicked World of Feminist Horror Fiction. So this book is in there and I go into quite a lot of detail. I think I probably give more time in that video to this book than any other, without spoiling it, so go check that video out. This is the very last book that I read in May, Overgrowth by Mira Grant, which is a pen name of American author Seanan McGuire. And honestly, of every book I talk about in this video, Overgrowth was the most page-turnery. I could not stop reading this novel. It's another book that blends science fiction and horror. That's why I chose it. I'm fascinated by the intersection between those two genres. But Overgrowth is such an incredibly Moorish story. It's an alien invasion story where our protagonist is one of the aliens, but she's also human. Kind of. Overgrowth is primarily set 5 years from now. Our protagonist is 35, and she was born in Washington State. See, when Anastasia was 3 years old, she wandered into the forest near her house. There, she was captured by a plant. That plant was actually an alien that had been sent down to Earth to do exactly what it does to her, to snatch her up, wrap her in vines, suck all the blood out of her until she just disappears, and then use her DNA, all of her information, to turn a seed into a perfect copy of her. That seed then uses all of her knowledge, all of her memories to wander back to her house and live her life. Now, like I said, she's 35 and she has spent her entire life telling everyone she meets that she is, in fact, an alien. No one believes her, her mother sent her to therapy, but she knows the truth. She knows she's an alien. And when the invasion comes, the first thing they do is send a message that she can understand because it's all true. I won't tell you any more, except for the fact that her boyfriend is trans, and that was lovely. But my Jesus H. God, I love this book. Full video coming soon. I shouldn't have talked for as long as I did then, but I couldn't help myself. This is so good. It's so much fun. Brilliant blend of sci-fi and horror. I love this book. Speaking of being trans, hi. Torrey Peters is a trans author, and this book is very good. This is Stag Dance, a collection of 4 stories. Torrey Peters wrote Detransition Baby, a novel that is lauded and much beloved by people like myself. I adore that book. And now we have a collection of 4 stories, one of which obviously is called Stag Dance. And the stories in here are all about being trans in one way or another, but they explore the trans experience from some really interesting perspectives. For example, the second and third stories in here, one of which is Stag Dance, they both feature characters that are not out and out trans women. They're both eggs. In fact, Stag Dance, is the character an egg or just, I don't know, it's complicated. The first story is a post-apocalyptic tale about a bunch of horrible trans women who caused the apocalypse. It's really, really fun. The final story is about this weekend in Vegas where a protagonist is kind of being pulled in this tug of war between someone who likes to dress as a woman as a kind of kink and someone who is a genuine transgender woman. And our protagonist is sort of sitting in the middle being tugged back and forth. Stag Dance is set in the past and it's about a bunch of lumberjacks doing an illegal logging operation, and they decide to put on a dance out in the woods where some of them get to be the girl. And then there's another story in here that was probably my favorite, which is set in a boarding school. And our protagonist starts up a sexual relationship with another boy that he's rooming with, but the boy that he's rooming with is very obviously a trans egg. Egg, by the way, if you don't know, is code for someone who doesn't know that they're trans yet, but the signs are there. Once you realize you're trans, we say it's cracking your egg. So these 2 boys are in a gay relationship because one of them's an egg. But it's from the perspective of the other boy, which in the hands of a cis writer would probably come across as homophobic. Hello, John Boyne. But in the hands of a trans writer, it's written with a lot more nuance and humor and darkness and intrigue and complexity. These are great stories. Many people are calling The Lamb by Lucy Rose one of the best books of this year, and I cannot disagree with that. This is an impeccable debut novel. It's a pretty simple tale, and it feels like a dark adult fairy tale flipped on its head. Imagine Hansel and Gretel, but it's a prequel and it's the story of the witch who lives in the gingerbread house. Our protagonist is a preteen girl who lives with her mother, who lives in a cottage in the woods. And they both happen to be cannibals because the mother has raised her daughter to be a cannibal. Occasionally, people get lost and stumble into the woods or even knock on their door for help, and they take them in and then they make them feel at home before cooking and eating them. But one day, one of those strangers that comes along kind of ingratiates herself into the family. She is not cooked and eaten, but instead brought into the fold. Our protagonist feels animosity towards her. She is a threat to their way of life. This woman is falling in love with her mother, or at least making her mother fall in love with her. I won't tell you any more, but this is a fascinating work of feminist horror, which once again I went into in a lot of detail in my video about feminist horror fiction, so go watch that. And before we get into the comics, the very last book I want to talk about is Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix is one of my favorite horror authors, and he is one of the biggest names in horror fiction writing today. For good reason. He's really wonderful. In fact, I did a whole video about how wonderful he is. You can go watch that video after this one. It's a good video, he's a good author, this is a great book, and honestly, I think I'm done with that because I have now talked about this book, I think, in like 4 separate videos. It just keeps coming up. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls is really, really good. Go read it. Go watch the videos where I talk about this book because Hendrix is special. I love this thing. Oh, it's really wonderful. I could start it all over again right now. Cover to cover. I might just sit here on the floor and just read this whole thing again. It's so much fun, but it's so dark and so awful, and I cried multiple times. It's a real tearjerker, but it's really exciting. It's everything that I love about Grady Hendrix. And yeah, it is his best book yet, in my opinion. And now this is the moment in the video where a lot of people leave and some people stay because I'm going to talk about comics. As I said in last month's reading wrap-up video, I've been getting right back into the X-Men. And so very slowly over April and May, I reread Grant Morrison's New X-Men. This right here is a big anthology of a whole bunch of X-Men comics that Morrison wrote around the turn of the 21st century. And honestly, if you wanted to get into X-Men comics, the best way to do it is to watch the 90s animated series, read a bunch of the comics that Chris Claremont wrote in the 80s, many of which were adapted into that animated series, like The Dark Phoenix and Days of Future Past, but he also wrote God Loves Man Kills. Chris Claremont was incredible. His run on X-Men is legendary, and it always will be. But then you have to read Grant Morrison's New X-Men. This is the story that sets up the character of Cassandra Nova, as well as a group of strange people called the U-Men, who go about harvesting the organs of mutants in order to try to become mutants themselves. There are so many crazy ideas in here because, well, it's Grant Morrison, who has been my favorite comic book writer for the entire time I've been reading comics. And if ever you really wanted to appreciate the X-Men at its height, I would say this is it. But in the present day, we have just gone through a massive, like 5-year-long era in the X-Men comics called the Krakoa Age. Krakoa is a mutant who is also an island where the other mutants have been living. The Krakoa Age just came to an end, and it began with Jonathan Hickman. But Jonathan Hickman was like kicked off his own comic or something. I can't remember what happened. But either way, he never got to finish his vision. Instead, his vision was taken over by Jerry Duggan and a few other writers and artists. So this story takes place kind of halfway through the Krakoa Age. And I decided to pick it up because I like Duggan's writing. I read the Jonathan Hickman story that established the Krakoa Age, which is called House of X Powers of 10, I think. Yeah. I read that over Christmas. I'm now reading the newest comics that are set post-Krakoa Age, and I also wanted to see what Jerry Duggan was writing in the middle of the Krakoa Age. It's all a bit weird. Comics are weird. What are you gonna do? This is really good though. He's a great writer. And speaking of great comic book writers, Chip Zdarsky has just finished his run on Batman. Now, Batman will forever be my favorite comic book superhero. And in my opinion, Chip Zdarsky has had a fantastic run on Batman. I have loved what Zdarsky has done with the Caped Crusader. And here are volumes 4 and 5 of his run. This is it. This is the end. And it has been such a wild ride. Zdarsky really leans into that golden age kind of strangeness. There are so many weird concepts and ideas, and Zdarsky also does a pretty decent job of expanding on and elaborating Batman's origin story, making it even more enticing and exciting, introducing new characters and new ideas, and then bringing all of those into the present day as threats that Batman then has to deal with, and has been dealing with them for so many issues now. These stories are so good. Zdarsky will be missed. I could have read his Batman for years. And finally, I also picked up this kind of standalone known Batman miniseries. This is called Batman Off-World, and it is a science fiction space adventure starring Batman. It was written by Jason Aaron, who's done loads of work over at Marvel. He wrote X-Men a little while ago, and he's also done some of his own original works that were published by Image. Jason Aaron is fantastic, and I haven't read anything he's put out in like years at this point. So I checked out Batman Off-World, which is drawn by Doug Mahnke, who is a legend in comic book art at this point. And this is just straight up pulp sci-fi fun starring Batman. It's set early in his career. He's been Batman for about 2 years. And one day, a gangster somehow hires an alien to dispose of Batman, and he almost puts him completely out of commission. When he recovers, Batman takes a spaceship to the galaxy where this alien came from, because he realizes that he is not fully equipped. He's not the best person in the world yet. And that's always Batman's mission, to be unstoppable, unbeatable, stronger, faster, smarter than every other person. So he goes off into space to fight aliens whose stomachs are in their arms and their brains are in their thighs. Weird aliens that he has to overcome. But as he's there, he learns about so many injustices that are going on in this world of corporate greed and alien trafficking. And he steps up. And he falls in love, and he liberates people, and he frees them, and he saves them, and he does what Batman does on distant planets. And it is such a fun ride. This is one of the best Batman comics I've literally ever read. And it's a miniseries. It is 6 issues. It is this one book, and then you're done. One pulpy sci-fi adventure starring Batman. And I loved it. There you go. That is everything that I read in May. It was a really fun month. There was nothing that I read that I didn't love. It was great. Everything was great. Some really amazing books here. 2 of which I haven't talked about yet in any other videos, and that video that they're both in is coming soon, like in June. So stick around for that. What else? Oh yeah, I can't find it. There's a copy of my book around here somewhere. I'm gonna put a picture of it right here. There are links in the description. Buy it, read it. People keep asking me if my book is only available on Amazon because a lot of people don't like to use Amazon, and I fully appreciate that. Absolutely. Yes, I get it. I don't like using Amazon either, but it was the quickest and easiest way for me to self-publish a book. I mean, I also had to spend a lot of money paying a cover designer and a formatter, so it's not quick and easy to do any of this, but you get what I mean. And I know it's quick and easy on purpose. It's Amazon. They want you to use it. I'm not stupid. I know. But yes, Amazon is currently the only place where you can buy a copy of my book. I'm sorry about that. If I can get it published by a small indie press, that would be great. Maybe it'll happen. We'll see. Right now, that's where it is. Go get yourself a copy because it's very good. If you've enjoyed this video, if you've been watching me for a while and you think my videos are worth something, you can support me on Patreon, where I will be uploading a lot of stories in the future. I have 5 new stories that are all currently in note form on my laptop. They're gonna become stories very soon, and they will all go on my Patreon. So if you do want to read my writing, all of my upcoming stories will be going on my Patreon. So if you don't want to use Amazon, join my Patreon, wait for a few weeks, and you'll have some new stories of mine. Good. Patreon. Buy my book. Subscribe for books. Bye.